a hedge fund founder in Connecticut, and a judge in 14th century North Africa independently described the same thing. Empires do not die of invasion. They die of arithmetic. Ray Dalio calls it the long-term debt cycle. Ibn Khaldun called it the fourth generation. Canada is somewhere inside it. Canadian households now owe $1.80 for every dollar of disposable income. That is the highest in our history. Dalio's argument, set out in his work on changing world orders, is that great powers move through a long arc. They win, they build, they borrow, they financialize, and they decline while insisting they are not. His framework is his own, and worth reading in full. What matters here is one stage of it, the stage where a country's cleverest people and largest returns move out of making things and into claims on things that already exist. That stage has a signature, and it is visible in the data. So apply the test to Canada in 2026. Start with production. Canada's real GDP per capita grew 2% over the decade to 2024. The OECD average was 15%. Canadians today have a lower standard of living than they did in 2022. Productivity growth sits near 0.7% a year, under half the American rate. Business investment per worker has fallen behind most of our peers. That is the productive base. Now the asset side. Nationally, buying the average home now takes roughly 8 years of a median household income. 3 to 5 years is what economists call affordable. And here the honest picture is more mixed than the headlines suggest. National Bank's affordability monitor puts the mortgage payment on an average Vancouver home at about 82% of a median income in the first quarter of 2026. In Toronto, about 71%. Both of those improved slightly. Toronto has now improved for 9 consecutive quarters, which tells you how far it had to fall from, not that the problem is solved. Here is where it gets specifically Khaldunian. According to data compiled by WOWA Data Labs and reported by the Globe and Mail, between November 2025 and January 2026, Canada's Big Six banks wrote off $38 million against a combined mortgage book of $1.76 trillion. Over 4 quarters, total write-offs were $168 million, about 1/100%. First quarter 2026 profits across the six, $19 billion in a single quarter. CIBC profit rose 43%. Read that carefully. The most profitable, most reliable business in the Canadian economy is lending against houses that already exist. Not building them, not financing a factory or a chip plant, holding a claim on shelter that Canadians cannot afford, at almost zero risk, because the debt is insured and the collateral is a necessity. That is not a conspiracy. It is a rational response to incentives. It is also, precisely, an economy where the returns have moved from production to rent. Numbers this large stop meaning anything, so put them somewhere smaller. A kitchen table in a house someone bought at 4 times their income and now services at 7. The mortgage renews. The rate was near 2%. It is now near 4. Nothing about the house changed. Nothing about the family changed. The claim on them did. The same pattern, larger to the south. In 2026, American corporate buybacks reached $1.2 trillion, a record. Corporate profits hit $4.4 trillion in the first quarter, but revenue is growing around 8% while earnings per share grow 2%. The gap is manufactured. Roughly 2 to 4% of S&P 500 earnings growth comes from shrinking the number of shares, rather than selling anything more. Margin debt stands at a record $1.5 trillion. Ibn Khaldun did not know what a share buyback was. He would have recognized the shape immediately. Enormous sophistication deployed to redistribute an existing pie, and comparatively little deployed to grow it. And the tax side of his curve. The Fraser Institute, a think tank that argues for lower taxes, so weigh it accordingly, calculates that the average Canadian family will earn $166,790 this year and pay $72,539 in total taxes across all three levels of government. Meanwhile, roughly 15 million Canadian mortgages renew in 2026, most written near 2%, repricing toward 4. 90-day delinquencies reached 0.24% nationally in the fourth quarter of 2025, up from 0.21% a year earlier. But the national figure hides the regional one. In Ontario, the rate is closer to 0.36%, and in Toronto nearer 0.38%. Those are still low numbers by world standards. They are also the fastest-moving ones in the Canadian economy. Dalio's own framework does not predict collapse, and neither will I. It describes a long, grinding adjustment, lower real returns, contested politics, and a slow argument about who absorbs the losses. Most of that is boring, and most of it is already happening. And the counter-argument deserves stating properly. Canada's housing costs reflect a real shortage of homes where people want to live. Banks lending against houses is what banks are for. Arrears remain low by world standards. A country can carry a productivity deficit for a very long time without anything dramatic happening at all. So here is the test, and it is 600 years old. When the people at the top get richer, is it because something new was built, or because a claim on something old was enforced? Ibn Khaldun asked it in 1377. Dalio asks a version of it now. The uncomfortable part is not that the answer is bad. It is that we already have the data, and we are still arguing about whether to look at it.